Broadcast from the coast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's Johnny.
She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
This 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Have you checked the children?
Welcome everybody to They Cast from the Coast, episode 40, might I add. My name is Adam Miles, and I have with me as always Tim. I ain't so pretty, I know that, Johnson.
Okay, asshole.
How you doing, Tim?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I probably messed that up too because I was thinking about it yesterday, and I'm like, "What am I?" Oh yeah, here we go. We're gonna throw something out there. Kind of the bastard child of the series anyway, because of everybody's love-hate relationship with Roy.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, that's a great entry in the series. I love that entry.
It is.
I liked Roy. Everybody shits on Roy. I like Roy. He had some great kills.
I think it was a perfect example of Friday the 13th trying to reinvent itself. And yeah, it might not have jived with majority of the fans, but I certainly give it props for trying something different. I thought it was great. It's still one of my favorites.
Absolutely. We're gonna have to dedicate an episode to it. We're gonna do a Friday 13th retrospect anyway.
Tribute to Roy. Hashtag tribute to Roy.
Tribute to Roy. There you go.
Justice for Roy.
That's right. Well, we got to keep moving around the table though tonight because we got something special on the go tonight. So Dave and the big white puffy headphones, Miles. Hey,
Hey, what's happening?
Not much, man. Not much.
I'm good.
Doing well?
I'm good.
Excellent. Okay. Everything's good.
Looking forward to tonight's show. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Special
guest tonight. So these are always fun.
Special guest tonight. And may I introduce, ladies and gentlemen, everybody to our special guest of the evening, Vincent DiSanti.
Yay!
Thank you for having me on. No, it's good to be here. Oh. And I love Roy, too.
Yes!
I'm a big fan of Part 5. I love Part 5.
Part 5's great.
Part 5's iconic. Part 5's iconic.
You need it.
A lot of people don't realize, I've actually been into conversations with people where they name some of their favorite kills, and in the same breath state that they hate Part 5, but the kills that they're talking about came from Part 5.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of great moments in that movie. It's part of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. I mean, you can't, you can't have 6 without 5. It's like, you kind of need it.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. That's great. So, for everybody who's tuning in right now, and some of the people who are probably tuning in and don't really realize, Vincent DiSanti is going to be the topic of conversation tonight we're going to have with him is about a fan film that he has released. An absolute love and homage to one of the greatest horror movie slasher series ever. Never Hike Alone, which a lot of people are considering, and I'm going to say this, canon, a story in the Friday the 13th universe. And it's getting big waves right now. It's making big waves. Everybody's loving it. I mean, what are you going to say about it? So we're going to sit down. We're going to have a couple of questions with Vincent here. And let's start that off. I guess no time like the presents, right, guys? So I'll start, I guess.
Okay.
Where did the inspiration for the story and the tale come from?
Well, I mean, I've always just been a big Friday the 13th fan. And when I was a kid, I was watching the films, and I started to really get interested in how they were made. Would wonder why does Jason look so different in this film? Or, wait, does that really match up with the story back? Like, something seems different. And so I started to, research how the films were made, and I'd research different, directors and different, production companies were kind of attached and did different things for each of the films, and it started to teach me about film. Yeah. And I'd watch a lot of the BTS, and I'd watch a lot of those, Camp Crystal Memories types things that would come along with the VHSs or the DVDs or something that would come along. DVD was kind of coming up big, and they had a lot of the behind the scenes, and so taught me a lot about how films were made. And I always loved entertainment and horror, and I wanted to get into film. So, I mean, from very early on, I would say that like a big goal in my life would have been to have worked on a Friday the 13th film, on an official production. Eventually, I moved out to LA. I started working in the film industry, and I quickly realized that I was probably never going to get to work on a Friday the 13th film. It just didn't seem in the cards. I was working in a completely different medium. The opportunities that were coming my way were just completely different. And, you know, one day I went hiking with my wife. We went out to Big Bear for a day and just kind of hiked a bunch of different places. We were taking photography, and we were driving down the road, and we pulled onto this dirt road and started to drive down. And we started to see all these like really old and creepy cabins. And I was like, this is really cool. Pull over. Let's check this out. And so we got out of the car and we started walking around this like collection of cabins that reminded me, of course, as a big Friday the 13th fan, of Camp Crystal Lake, and kind of jabbed her in the side. And I was like, hey, what if Jason's in one of these cabins? We're totally dead. And just kind of jokingly kind of like threw that off to the side. And we took some photos and, you know, just did some stuff and left. And I don't know, there was something about that location that I always said, like, man, if I ever made a Friday the 13th film, what a great location to do it. And so the idea started to kind of ruminate in my head, and I started to think about, like, well, you know, what are the stories, like, what stories are left in Friday the 13th? And I was like, well, what happens in between the films? Like, what happens to not the group of teens that go in, but just one guy who happens to be wandering through, and he's like, oh, look what I found. Like, what would that confrontation look like? And so really Never Hike Alone grew out of that. Was like, what happened if you walked into Crystal Lake? Would you make it out alive? And that is the concept that kind of started it, and it took a long time for me to get it to where it was, because I never really thought about really filming it. I never really took it seriously at first. It was just something that, I don't know, it was something that kind of chewed at me for a little while and was like, hey, you should do this. Like, you know you want to do this. I know you're writing that thing right now, but you really want to be working on this Friday the 13th movie, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so I started writing it, and it really just came out of that. I mean, that's where it came. It was a love of Friday the 13th and kind of happening upon something that inspired it and thinking that I had an idea that was worth pursuing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. Tim, you got a question?
How did you come up with... See, because Jason's so iconic, and you did touch on this for a second, how he looks different in every film. How did you come up with the look of Jason for your film? Like, because it seems to me like it's a combination of a bunch of different Jasons, but it's still very much original.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think there's something to say that each film has something original about it. Each film has somewhat of its own tone, its own look, its own feel. I mean, only Steve Miner was the only director to ever direct twice. So 2 and 3 have a pretty similar vibe. But 4, Zito, it's much darker. 5, you know, you got something a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more goofy and rambunctious. 6, you got more gothic. And so each of them kind of bring their own flavor. And I think with me is that where my design came from was a dislike for where Jason has been going. I kind of, ever since kind of New Line took over and you know, we had Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X and Freddy vs. Jason and even the remake, I was just never really like, wow, that's a really good Jason. I'd always be like, man, did they really have to do that this time? Like, it doesn't really seem right. And so as a challenge to myself before I was even going to make Never Hike Alone, I started building my own cosplay for the first time. I was like, I want to build my own stuff. And I started to build this one version that looked like a mixture between part 3 and part 4. And then I think I got to like some type of like flame war online with another Friday the 13th fan about like the way Jason looks in the remake. And I was like, and in my opinion, it was an over-designed look. I was like, he's just got too much shit on him. He's like got a utility belt and a giant jacket and all these things. And I was like, I don't hate the jacket. I was like, it's a good idea. I was like, but why does it always have to be like super puffy and like up over his shoulders? Like, why doesn't it just look like a jacket that's like a culmination of the Dickies shirt? And so I searched online, found a jacket that looked like that, and started to put together this outfit. I had this old Henley that I had that I turned into the sweater that went underneath, bought some Dickies pants and had them and kind of worked with them and roughed them up, and really just started building this costume from scratch, thinking like, this is going to be cool. And around the time that it really started to come together is when Never Hike Alone started to come together. And, you know, I ended up purchasing a hood from CFX, Louisiana, set of gloves from them as to kind of give it the completed look. I wanted the undead feel. I thought going after a human Jason after all this time would be a waste of time. Everybody loves undead Jason. Let's go back to that and let's design something that's a little bit more up to date with that. And I started to buy a bunch of repro masks. And so I'd put a part 3 mask on and be like, oh, that's not really right. I'd put a part 6 mask on. I'd be like, it's not fitting this Jason. And eventually I said, you know what? I'm going to design my own mask. I was like, why not? I was like, I've done everything else. It's like, why not come up with something unique? And so I started to research like old hockey masks, such as like Jacques Plock and things from the 60s and the 70s, where I felt that the equipment that would have been left behind at Camp Crystal Lake would have resembled something from the late 50s, early 60s. Maybe if they tried to, bring the camp back in the late 60s, they would have bought a bunch of equipment and then got shut down and would have left it behind. So it was kind of born out of that. And so I wanted something from that era, and I ended up contacting the people at CFX. They were totally gracious. They wanted to do it. I put together this kind of Photoshop template of what I wanted the mask to look like from all these different reference photos. And we started building it from scratch. And that's really, in my opinion, the whole costume of Jason revolves around the mask. And if the mask doesn't look good, and if you're not focused on his face, then Jason's not going to be as effective. There's going to be something, the audience won't be able to tell what it is, but there's going to be something missing. And that was one of my complaints with 2009, was that I felt that the costume was really distracting, and the mask wasn't really that great looking. It was really oval, and it sat weird on his face, and I was just like, I don't know. Like, okay. That's the way I felt about the movie. I was like, okay. I was like, why don't I love it? I was like, I love Friday the 13th. Yeah. I should love this movie. What's missing? And really the look of Jason came out of me trying to figure out like what's missing to me, and recreate it with my budget as much as I could. And I really concentrated on the mask, and that's where I really felt that it was going to come across the best.
Nice. 2-part question here. How tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
6'3". So you donned the costume and the outfit for Jason in this. How? And this is actually a question from one of our fans, one of our listeners, so I'm going to bring it right in here. Joel asks, how did you feel entering the character of Jason and donning the mask?
Well, it was a challenge. When we were originally going to do this, it was only going to be a 10 to 15 minute short, so I wasn't really worried about it. I was like, I think I can play it for this moment, and I'll tell you what, I underestimated it. I went underestimating because I had an idea for the types of stunts that we would do, and I had an idea of how long I would have screen time. And when I actually met with my stunt coordinator and the film started to get longer, we started to talk about it, she was like, you're going to need a stunt double. And I was like, what are you talking about? I can do all my own stunts. I'm athletic. I played sports. Like, I'm good. And she's like, no. It's not about whether you can do them or not. It's whether or not you do them and accidentally get hurt, and then you can't do it, and then you got to shut down your film. And so I went, oh, okay. And so it became a challenge because I started to realize that there was a lot of screen time. And so I would put it on myself to practice. There's a trail behind my house that we actually shot part of the film on, which is where it's the no trespassing sign. So that trail is actually behind my house. So I would get up on a Saturday and I would walk that trail, which is not an easy hike. And I would practice posture, and I would practice the stride, and I would just kind of get in the mode for when I have the costume on, how am I going to move? And then when I had the costume, I'd put it on, I'd walk around the house, I'd go take photography and have my wife take photos of me, and we'd look at the posture, we'd look at the way I was standing, and really studied it. And it was something that, it wasn't just, I'm going to throw the mask on, I'm going to do it, I'm going to run out there and beat someone's ass. It was like, no, I'm really going to pay attention to how this guy moves. I'm going to pay attention to the way this costume moves. And then I had to teach that to my stunt double, this guy, Brian Forrest. And so we would go to his stunt rehearsal space. It was like in the Valley in Los Angeles. And so we spent about, I think, 3 weeks, a couple times each week, we would go meet out there. And him and I would go through the walk, and we would go through a lot about the way Jason moves and how he was going to have to emulate the way that I was playing him and the types of actors that I was looking at, like a Ted White or a C.J. Graham or a Kane Hodder or even Derek Mears. It's like, look at these types of nuances. Like, we're pulling this out of this, or we're concentrating on the way that he moves, and look at the posture, and always standing up straight and chest out and shoulders back, and like always imposing, always aggressive. And so there was a lot of that went into it. And then I learned a lot. Like, I learned a lot from Brian, because he's actually a weaponsmith. He's a blacksmith, and he knows how to wield weapons. So I'd be swinging the machete around. He'd be like, like the blade's not even out in front, right? I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, hold it like this. And so he would show me ways that, if I was really going to strike somebody, to make sure the blade is always facing forward and how my arm's supposed to move and things like that. And not to say that Jason's some expert fighter or something like that, but he is pretty good at killing people, and it has to look good on screen. And you've never seen, except for maybe part 2, Jason kill somebody with the back of a machete. So
yeah, go figure.
Well, he was just getting started. He just, he
didn't know everything yet.
He was a noob.
Yeah, noob.
So I know that was a long answer, but essentially a lot of work went into it. It wasn't just throw the costume on and go out there and walk around. It was go out, film yourself. What does it look like? Is it good enough? What could we do different, and how can we make it better?
Sweet.
Wow.
Good stuff. Tim, you got another question, don't you?
I do. How did you get Tom Matthews to be in your short film? Because that I did not know, and I sat down, and he opened the door. It blew my mind. And then to see that it actually said Tommy, I was, wow. How did that all come about?
Well, it's funny. We probably had about half the film shot in the fall. We had an executive producer. His name's Barry J. He was on the film, and he had a mutual friend who knew Tom. And the mutual friend knew how big of a fan Barry was of Friday the 13th, and he knew Tom, and he knows Tom likes talking to fans, so he set them up on like a dinner date. So it was Barry, Tom, and Tom's wife, and they went out and, talked Friday and just kind of talked about life, and Barry ended up telling him about this Never Hike Alone, and that he was helping out with this, fan film, and that, he said a lot of great things about me and how dedicated I was and how hard I was working on it. And he showed him our first trailer. Because this is like about December 2016, and the first trailer is nothing compared to the second trailer, and Tom was even blown away by that one, the first one, and he was like, "Wow, this is really great!" And Barry said, "If there was a role, would you want it?" And he was like, "I'll think about it." And so Barry set up a lunch with me and Tom, and so I went out and met with Tom, and at the lunch, I showed him our second trailer, which was much more, had actual footage from the film in it at that point, and had some of our, better stuff that was in it. The new mask was in it. And then I pitched Tom the story, and I said, listen, I got this crazy ending. He ends up in the ambulance, and, we have this role of the driver. And I was like, and it's played by somebody else right now, but if we gave you that role, I was like, and Tim, you just said it. I was like, the minute you open those doors, you're going to blow the minds like every Friday the 13th fan that's out there, because one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to tell anybody you're in it. We're not going to blow our wad now. We're not going to go out and tell people that you're in it and have them all expecting and waiting for you to show up, and you're only in it for 4 minutes. It's like, we want it to be a surprise. We want fans to just have something unexpected happen. It's like, how many times during a Friday the 13th film do you watch it, even if it's a new one, do you not expect things to happen? I mean, you expect almost everything because it's pretty much tailor-made from the formula. But having that happen, having Tom show up in a fan film, we knew it would be special, so we kept it close. And it was something that, from that point, at first I was like, you don't even have to be Tommy. I won't make you do that. You can just be the driver. You can do something. He's like, no, if you got Tommy, use Tommy. He's like, I'll do it. He's like, I'm cool, with you guys making it Tommy Jarvis. And so from there we had to talk, and he really helped with us as we were writing the ending. I would send him versions, and he would be like, oh, I don't know about that. Or, there was one point where everybody was going to die. And that was one of the points where I was like, well, Tom, I don't really see you as Tommy because I don't want to encroach and I don't want to piss anybody off. And he was like, no, make it Tommy. And he's like, and don't kill him. And I was like, all right, let me come up with something. And I eventually came up with the ending that was shown on screen, and he loved it. I was like, Tom, this is great. And that was the second time I went, oh man, fans are going to flip out because they think you're dead. And then you come back and you totally save the day. And it's like, what's better to save Kyle than you? And I was like, and then you guys are off on some adventure that we'll figure out another day. And I think that that's what fans are really, really going to want. Jason chasing them off into the forest. I think that will be a really powerful ending that will leave a lot of people happy. And, and through the entire process, Tom was great. Through rehearsals, he was really good. He really gave it his all. When we went to set, he was great with the entire crew, the other actors, running through lines with them before they went out there. It was just really great to have on set, and he's just a really nice guy, and we're really proud to have him in the film and really, really thankful.
Nice. Sweet. Nice. Dave?
That's cool. So my question, which you sort of touched on a little bit earlier, but maybe a little bit more in depth. So talk on what are your thoughts on the way the current Friday property is being handled? Because right now there's so many different hands in the pot, and it's kind of gone from studio to studio. I mean, Paramount has had their hands in it. New Line Cinema, Warner Brothers also has their hands involved in it with different rights. There's some rights issues going on right now between Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham. And basically, what are your thoughts on the way the current Friday property is being handled? And ultimately, do you think we're ever going to see another theatrical Friday the 13th with what's going on right now?
Well, I'll kind of answer it in reverse. I think we will see another Friday the 13th in some way, shape, or form because Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham wouldn't be getting into this rights battle if they didn't want to make money. And there's no way they're going to make more money if they don't make more Friday the 13th. So I think fans should kind of sit back and remember that. Like, nobody's going to fight over this stuff because they want to stick it in a cabinet and make no money with it. They're doing it because they want it to be lucrative and they want to make some type of income off of it. I think that will eventually get settled. Legal battles just take forever, and it's a pain in the ass. And the only people who are losing are the fans. I mean, the fans are missing out on Fridays. And to answer the other question, I think that where my biggest gripe with the franchises right now is that I don't think it's in the hands of anybody that really love it. You know?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that if you really want, I think you look at like Marvel, you look at, these different things. I mean, like Stranger Things and all these different, franchises that are doing really well right now. If you look at it, like let's look at something that's a little bit more similar, like Chucky. You have Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky. However you feel about those films, you have Don Mancini writing that thing because it's his baby and he loves it and he's going to tell his stories and he's going to make sure that entity keeps going. And you also have, Tony Gardner, who's the VFX, wizard for those films, who's also interested in doing that, keeping his, having a passion for do it. So I think what Friday the 13th needs more than anything is somebody with passion who can come in and say, I want to tell more stories. I want to make fans happy. I think if it comes down to how are we going to make the most money off this Friday, or like who can we market this Friday to, it's like, it's really not that hard. You have millions of fans out there who are ready for your films, and if you make them happy, other people will want to join in. And I think that was my strategy with Never Hike Alone. It was like, I'm going to make something that fans are going to eat up. They're going to see things from the past. They're going to see things about the future. They're going to see things about the present that all make sense in a world that Friday should exist in. We're just telling kind of a more unique story, but we're doing it in a way that I think fans are really going to love it. And if they like it, fans who aren't even fans of the franchise are going to look over their shoulder because somebody's enjoying something. And anytime you see a group of people, no matter what it is, enjoying something, you want to peek over their shoulder and see what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And by doing that, that's how you interest new people. So that was my strategy, and I think that Friday the 13th should do the same thing. I think they should stop running from the past. I think that they should stop running from trying to make sense of everything and just dive right in and be like, yeah, none of it makes sense. We love it.
Yeah.
And just go for it and just make something really, really fun. And, I read the last two scripts that came out. I read the Nick Ancosta script, and I didn't think it was I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was, for a first draft, it had more elements of Friday than I've seen in anything in the last 20 years. Yeah. The Guzanowski script was not. I mean, it was a complete refabrication of the entire mythos about how it works. It, in my opinion, it kind of only satisfies like one group of fans. And it satisfies a very small group of fans. And everyone else who thinks a different way is going to feel left out. And I think that that's a big mistake you can make when making a Friday, is that if you don't make it close enough to what people really care about, which is basically the first 6 films, 7 films, 8 films, and then you try to rewrite that history, you're going to step into a big pile of shit. And you're going to piss off a lot of people, and they're going to walk out with a funny taste in their mouth. They're going to be like, I don't know. He killed people. He killed a bunch of people, but it wasn't, there's something missing. And I think that was my kind of mission on Never Hike Alone, was like, what's missing? And let me just put what I think is missing in here and see if that's the secret sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. I mean, that was my thing with the remake, was I'm watching a Friday the 13th movie. By all accounts, I'm watching Jason on screen killing people. What should feel like a Friday the 13th movie did not really feel like a Friday the 13th movie. It just felt like it was a shell. It was empty.
After the opening credits with the scenes with Mrs. Voorhees getting killed, it dropped off the map. Mm-hmm. That was the only thing that actually felt anything in tune with the original series, in my opinion. But after that, it was okay.
No, I agree. I mean, I went in. I was one of the biggest proponents of the film going in. I heard about the plot. I thought it was a very interesting plot. I thought it was a good story. I just thought that when it came time for execution, there were just things that were missing. It was like that first kill where the guy he's got the headphones on. Like you see Jason for like a split second, and then you don't even see what happens to the guy. And you're like, well, wait a second. Like, this is Friday the 13th. We want to see the machete go through his head.
Yeah.
Like, why are we cutting that out? And then trying to explain so much. And then, like, I don't know, there's, like, in Never Hike Alone, like, we spend a lot of time going through Camp Crystal Lake and searching, and they do that at the beginning of 2009. But instead of panning across a bed that says Jason on it, we actually tried to think about things that actually would be there. And not some bed that Pamela, would have hand-carved herself? Like, where's she getting this Jason bed? And I felt that was, like, pandering. Like, I felt like I was being pandered to, and I felt like when Jason finds the mask, it's very casual. It's non-eventful. Yeah. They worked on that face, which is gigantic and one of the most intricate faces they've ever made, and they never show it. And so it was one of those things where I was like, all the elements are there. They weren't playing the right notes. They were playing them like in flat or something like you know. It was like it's like, what were they missing? And I think what was missing was I think there was a lot of well-intentioned people on that project, but ultimately I think the passion needed to come from, you know, the director. And I don't, you know, from the stories I hear, I don't think Nispel was really thrilled about making another remake. I don't think he was really all that jazzed about Jason, and I think that showed when it came time for the execution.
Nice. Nope. Agreed.
Yep.
We're running a little bit low on time here, so the next couple of questions we're going to try to get through as quickly as possible. Tim, your next question.
You're obviously a huge Friday fan. If you had to pick one Friday film to be your favorite, what would it be?
Jason Lives.
Ooh. Nice. Nicely said. Very nice. Dave.
So, I mean, obviously, again, huge Friday fan, but have you ever thought of tackling any of the other franchises, such as Texas Chainsaw, Halloween, or even something else?
There's only one slasher in my heart, but I do have a kick-ass idea for Critters.
Oh, okay.
On board. I like it. Yeah, we'll have to catch up later on and hear something about that. That's great.
Cool.
So, my last question, and then we have one more from Dave. At least one person so far, and it was Joel again, actually in this case, asked me if you could ever see where a lot of these fan films are starting to get releases of some kind, or, you know, permission for releases. Do you ever think that you put out a quote-unquote bootleg or otherwise VHS version? Because even though it's not really something that's viable to watch anymore, everything comes out on VHS again nowadays.
Well, I think as far as like home release, we've actually put some thought into it, and we realized that we might be able to take a similar strategy to the same way we did the production for Never Hike Alone, which is as long as the proceeds of going into paying for it pay for itself, it's paying into the own production of it, we might be able to release something. And fans have been asking for a Blu-ray or a DVD or something that they can take home and put on their shelf, something physical. So we are doing research into figuring out how much that will cost, possibly going back to Kickstarter, running it through that way. And our original Kickstarter was supposed to raise money for Penny Pine's reforestation program, but we used all of the money to make the film. So I've been looking for a way to kind of deliver on that promise, and we think that delivering like a Blu-ray or DVD, something like that, will give us the ability to have something pay for itself and then make a substantial donation to something that we really believe strongly in.
Okay. So no possible VHS.
I mean, it's one of those things we got to do the research on and see how much it costs to make them. I think somebody already made a bootleg VHS. Somebody made it.
Somebody beat you to it.
Yeah, I think just a home fan. So it's like I'm totally down for people doing that. I think as long as they're spreading the word and they're showing people Never Hike Alone, I'm happy.
Nice. Dave, final question.
Sounds good. With the outpouring of support from the horror community, because we all love, Never Hike Alone, is there a potential for a sequel?
There's definitely potential for a sequel. It's basically written itself. I worked it out with Tom. Andrew and I have talked about it on multiple occasions. I've talked to my team. The only issue is that it crosses out of fan fandom when it comes to the budget. I mean, you're talking about actually needing to come in and bring in full crews, work them all the time. There's no way we'd be able to make the sequel the way we made the original, because the original was about to the two characters, and then we're able to do our bigger thing on the side to try and break it up the way we did before with like a cast of dozens and multiple locations, like in public places where we would need permits and, real casts and, all sorts of goodies that we could give to Kelsey Burke to make for all the cool kills that we would design. It's something that we'd want to approach Sean Cunningham and whoever else is going to be making these decisions about where Friday goes and say, listen, we have a really kick-ass idea for how to tie this all back in and bring it all back to the way it kind of was. It can tie into Never Hike Alone. Never Hike Alone could be your Saw. You know what I mean? Like Saw was a short, and then it fed into the feature. Like Never Hike Alone 2, if you want to call it that, is really kind of this parallel story because it follows more Tom's story. And then eventually you see Tom's day in the life before he meets Andrew, and that's kind of in the first third of the film. And then the second third of the film is what happens after that ambulance drives away, which is cool because you see little snippets of Drew kind of, or Kyle in this case, doing his thing out in the woods, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the thing, and it will play enough into the story to where you understand that somebody's discovered Camp Crystal Lake, but for all intents and purposes, Camp Crystal Lake to everybody in town has been dead and has been shoved off to the side for years, and they think nobody knows where it is or nobody can find it, so they think they're safe, and they don't realize that somebody's going to go out there and literally poke the bear. So it's a fun story, and it's got a lot of heart in it, and it's got a lot of comedy in it, and we'd have an opportunity to maybe do a couple more cameos. We think we got a good idea, and we think that Friday fans will love it, and also I think horror audiences in general will really get a kick out of it.
Sold.
Done. All right. Well, thank you very much, Vincent, for joining us. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you once again, Vincent, for joining us, buddy. And, all the best with everything else that you're doing, Womp Stomp Films and everything else. We'll be following you closely. That's for darn sure. And hopefully in the future, we'll get you back as a guest, but this time you won't necessarily be talking about what you've accomplished. Maybe we'll get you back on just to kind of shoot the shit and commentate about a movie with us. How do you think?
Oh, hell yeah. I love talking horror. Definitely love, if you do the part 5 retrospective, I'm totally in.
Yay! Yeah! Got you down. We are actually planning a Friday 13th retrospect. So you know what? We got our guest for part 5, gentlemen. So there we go. So perfect. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, guys. Thank you very much, Vincent, and see you after the break.
Greetings from Tromaville. I'm Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma Entertainment and creator of The Toxic Avenger. You know, folks, when we're not making those great movies like Tromeo and Juliet and Return to Nukem I, a.k.a. Volume 2, the Troma team and I like to kick back and listen to They Cast from the Coast. They Cast from the Coast is really the best entertainment, the best education, and the best emotional liberation that Lloyd Kaufman can possibly experience. Thank you.
It's that time of year again, and what better way to spend the summer months than in a place where you can play, learn, and grow. With plenty of activities to go around, we guarantee you'll have a fun and safe time here at Camp Crystal Lake, located in the Wessex County National.
This is a Channel 7 News Scene special report.
At approximately 8:30 a.m., the officers arrived at Camp Crystal Lake.
Identified as
a grisly fight, several
49,
victims were reportedly
a former
hacked
employee
to the
of the
bone.
camp.
Report that what you're about to see almost defies description, and some of you may not want to watch it.
Pending investigation, Camp Crystal Lake has been closed indefinitely.
Check 1, 2. Hey everyone, Kyle McLeod here, checking in on another glorious backcountry adventure. This week, we're going to be venturing through the Wessex County National Forest. I should mention, this hike is not for the weary, so I recommend only intermediate to advanced levels tackle this route.
Intermediate, maybe, advanced definitely.
So let me catch any of you noobs out here. Something sweet happened. I found this old trail marker on the other side of the creek. Now, it's not marked in the guidebook, but I think it's worth checking out. Camp Crystal Lake. Can't believe it. That story used to scare the hell out of me. someone was living here.
Welcome back, everybody. Love it. Great interview. Vincent's a great guy, and he's a fan above anything else, just like us.
Well, like Dave said during the break, he is a fan, so that automatically makes him a kindred spirit with us. He's a fan talking about the stuff that we like. Like, of course, it's going to be a great interview. Yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome.
That's why the movie stands apart. To me, it's more than a fan film. I mean, it's well written. It's a love letter. It's exactly. Absolutely. You can tell it was written by a fan, and we've said this countless times before. You know when a movie is written or directed, produced, created by a fan versus somebody who's just there for a paycheck. Yeah. This is a love letter to Friday the 13th, and it shows.
The thing that I find that made this stand out was the fact that there was love behind it, passion behind it. This killed like so many other Hollywood studio movies,
which is why I said at the beginning, a lot of people are chatting and saying they want to consider this canon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They want this to be part of the universe. Yes. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, he did it. This is better than anything we've gotten anytime recent. So
this is the Friday the 13th movie, that we have been waiting for, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the movie itself. For anybody who's tuning in, obviously you've probably seen it. If you haven't seen it and you're on the fence about seeing it, what the hell are you waiting for? You need to take the time. The only complaint that I heard from anybody so far was they just trying to find time for a 50-minute fan film because they kind of raised the eyebrow about the timeline, like the length, the running time. And I said, no. If you're going to sit down tonight and watch a movie that's going to be an hour and a half, fuck that. Put that away. Watch this. Take your time and watch this. Put it up on YouTube, on your TV, and watch the hell out of this. So, Dave, give us
no complaints. There should be no complaints. You're getting a Friday the 13th film, a new Friday the 13th film.
You got it.
There should be no complaints in a 55-minute runtime. Sit down, watch it, love it.
Enjoy it. That's right. So, Dave, give us the synopsis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the story itself focuses on Kyle MacLeod, which is the first part of the movie is kind of a shot on video, found footage type movie or type film, and Kyle MacLeod is the outdoorsy kind of guy. He's out hiking in the woods. It's like he runs his own, or he has his own adventure show.
It's like a YouTube blogger or something. Where
exactly. So basically we're following the exploits of Kyle as he's hiking into what's the county?
What's the Catskills?
Oh shit!
He's in the Catskills.
Essex County.
Essex County, that's right.
Essex County. So he's hiking, into the backwoods in Essex County. Obviously, he's got some sponsors because he's talking about these various tools and piece of equipment, that he's got. But anyway,
it's like the best scene.
I love it. Yeah.
The hell?
So Kyle is taking the viewers, into the backcountry on this hike. And it's through Essex County, which, of course, if you're a Friday the 13th fan, you'll know that it's the county where Camp Crystal Lake is located. And we end up at Camp Crystal Lake, or what's left of the ruins of Camp Crystal Lake. And, Kyle quickly comes to the realization that, wow, this place really did exist. This was where it all went down. This is where, the legend was born, essentially, of Jason Voorhees. And, we quickly find out, that it's much more than just a legend. There's a lot of truth to it. Jason shows up, and it becomes an all-out fight for survival between Kyle and, of course, Jason. And there's so many cool things going on in this movie. Like we're seeing locations. What's the word I'm looking for? Help me, guys. I mean, murder sites. You know what I mean? From the previous Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah, the crime
scenes. That's the word I'm looking for. I mean, he goes into one cabin and we see the bunk that Kevin Bacon's character would have laid in, and we see the pillow with the blood underneath and the
hole up through the pillow.
Yeah, like there's so much.
To go in the shower and you see the shower scene.
That blew me away.
Yeah,
because I think that was the first one, wasn't it? That
that was the first one. Yeah.
And that blew me away. I'm like, hey, that's the part, and oh yeah, it was like a trip down memory lane as I'm watching this movie. And I'm like, it was so well done. It was so well orchestrated. Like we said, it's a love letter to Friday the 13th. And, like I said, we're following Kyle as an adventure, vlogger, YouTuber, and he winds up at Camp Crystal Lake, ends up coming face to face with the legend of Jason Voorhees, and it becomes the fight for survival. And it's a fantastic movie. It really is.
Tim, talk about the story.
The story. What do you mean? Like pick up where Dave left off?
No, like tell us your opinion on the story. Like,
okay. Well, the thing that I found absolutely refreshing about this film was the decision to literally make it one man versus Jason.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have all the stereotypical, like, teenagers in the woods camping and all that.
The jock, the slut.
Yeah, you got a grown-ass man who is a hiker, outdoors enthusiast. He is a vlogger. It seems like he has, like, a YouTube. Like, aside from being the athletic part, I can empathize and understand this man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm not about to go running around the woods. So, with that being said, the fact that they switched up the formula for this film, I feel makes it stand out among the rest, because you really got to know this guy and actually feel sorry for him when he's going one-on-one against Jason. And, I think I mentioned this to you guys in just a conversation anyway. How cool was it that, like, he actually fought back? Where normally you see them running away, and I mean, he did run away, but he fought first.
Survival instincts.
Yeah, and, like, it wasn't just once. Like, he got away, and then it's like, oh, shit, I gotta go back, and then goes back, and then fights him, and then, oh, shit, I gotta go back, and, you know what I mean? So, I was really happy how the story was, because it was a simple story. It didn't go into all this other stuff. The first 3/4 of the film is literally you watching Kyle explore Camp Crystal Lake and fighting Jason. And yeah, like it was so awesome. It was so awesome. I can't collect my thoughts. They're all over the place.
So I agree with everything being said so far. I love the detail about this that they put into the story. I love the fact that, like you had mentioned, Dave, that the murder scenes were there. Mm-hmm. The murder, like they were there.
The crime scenes, yeah.
They weren't identical to the movies, and we know that because it's not the same location that it would have been shot in, obviously. But it almost had a feel as if, like, because he was talking about the fact that the stories had always been told. His brother used to tell him the stories of Camp Crystal Lake. So here's this abandoned place that's been there, abandoned since Pamela Voorhees and Jason Voorhees went on a killing streak. And when he goes there, everything is just as if it was the day after.
Yeah, because you know what I mean? You see on the calendar, they were all crossed off right up until Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. And when he goes to the murder locations, it's still bloody. Well, I mean, not wet bloody, but it's all dried and caked on, and everything's been left as is. And not everything is perfectly identical, which makes it almost like what we had seen previously were the
was
stories.
the story. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
that.
now we're looking at the real location here. And that just blew my mind even further. It was kind of like a little bit, further in depth. And that just made it great to me. Admittedly, I was not, the first time that I watched it, I was not a huge fan of the GoPro scenes.
No, I did. I loved it. I loved it all.
Yeah,
I'm just going to be honest. At first, I wasn't. I was kind of
honest.
It just kind of didn't sit right with me because I thought to myself, is this trying to be like a Blair Witch found footage, and we've talked about them on the previous episode, type of movie mixed in with Jason? And then as it became more and more prevalent that it was just a way to add to the story, I had a lot more respect for it because he didn't rely on it by any means. It was just a part of the character.
Well, what I found was it was very much a, like, especially like when he first gets into one of the lodges on his way up to what eventually comes to be Jason's room.
Yeah.
Right? He's got the GoPro like this and the flashlight and the knife.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going and you're looking through the GoPro image. That put me there.
Yeah.
Like, I felt that it was more the GoPro scenes. I see where you're coming from with it, Adam. But as it went on, it was almost like it immersed me more. Like I was there.
Yeah.
It was an invitation to this world more so than if it was just shot cinematically, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make any sense?
Perfect sense. And but that was my initial thought on this. Was at first I was kind of like, but then as it progressed,
fucking naysaying Adam.
Fucking naysaying Adam. Shut up, Tim.
I don't like this.
I ain't so pretty. I know that.
Well, wait a minute. Then you guys said you liked it, so I guess I had to also.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. But yeah, so I've watched it a couple times myself just to kind of go back and rewatch it because, in my opinion, this is going to now be part of a standard playlist with the Friday the 13th movies to me. It's going to be that movie. Probably more so than watching, say, Part 9 and stuff like that. So we'll talk about those
I have a hard time watching. Again, I'm a huge fan, but honestly, for the series, I have a hard time watching anything past Part 7. Part 8 I've rewatched again, over the past year, and I just find it very difficult to watch. It just got, I don't know, like that whole ending with the whole toxic waste thing, and it just, there were so many things that were done wrong with Part 8 that really I only like watching 1 through 7 now. And even 7 is a bit of a stretch, but I do like that Jason. I do like Zombie Jason in it. And of course it's the first Kane Hodder one. So it is a really good, it's a pretty good, entry in the series, but I would sooner watch 1 through 7 and then watch Never Hike Alone.
Yeah, it's pretty much gotten to that point. So, I mean, there's not a lot to talk about characters because we've already talked about the character here. The main character, Kyle MacLeod, is a strong character. He is the man's man. He is the hiker. He's the survivalist. Like we had mentioned, I like the fact that he's doing like product placements on his vlog
with the cue cards. And
with
he's like,
cue cards, fuck, and he's reading the cue cards.
I've been there. My videos, I've been there.
And then he's talking about the shovel.
He's likable and relatable and believable. Yeah. Of all else, he is a believable character, and that's the thing that I loved about this movie was I don't watch Jason movies to root for the fucking people. I'm rooting for Jason.
It's so true.
But this movie was the first Jason movie where I was like, oh shit, I hope Kyle gets away. Like,
yep. You're right. Yep.
Because I liked him, but then I was like, but I like Jason more. Right? So, I really like the Kyle character, and I was glad that the movie focused on him 3/4 of the movie.
I can honestly say, if they had not introduced Tom Matthews as Tommy Jarvis in this, I could almost picture Kyle MacLeod being a Tommy Jarvis character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He gets away. This has to end. People are going to die, or we have to make sure that he doesn't succeed in killing more people or whatever have you. And he's got a mission.
Can you imagine if Vincent actually gets to do the sequel?
I think we need to start a petition to actually have like Vincent like behind the lens to do like an actual Friday the 13th movie.
Oh my God! And bring Kane back! Oh my God!
I mean, that was my thought all along. Was watching this. You know, this has gained such popularity now. I'm hoping that somebody, you know, like Sean Cunningham liked what they were doing with the Slasher Volume 1 Summer Camp game and had gotten on board to make it a Friday the 13th game because for all intents and purposes, that's basically what it was. It just wasn't being called Friday the 13th. But why not lend the license and create that game? And I watched this movie and I'm like, there's no way that some executive somewhere or Sean Cunningham is not seeing, you know, the outpouring of support from the community and going, this guy's got talent. Wow, look at the story that they wrote. It works. Everyone loves it. Like, this is canon. Let's use this guy. Let's pick his brain and bring him on board for an official Friday the 13th movie. Right? I mean, why not?
Yep.
Why not?
That's
He
right,
brought
man.
something fresh to the table. Like, give the guy a chance.
Yeah.
Yep. You got it, buddy. You got it. No, it's great. So, Jason work. Let's talk about the Jason work again real quickly, because I mean we already talked about it with Vincent, but Dave, your outlook on the Jason.
On the Jason, you know what? I thought it was well done. You know, I liked Vincent's you know, his background, his story on the whole. You know, I want to do a fresh take. I mean, Jason looks slightly different in almost every Friday the 13th movie. Similar but different, and I like the fact that they took that iconic image, they changed it slightly, but not enough that, you know, we couldn't sit here and say, oh, that's not Jason. You know, it's Jason. For all intents and purposes, it's Jason. And it's kind of like what you said, Adam. I mean, I'm thinking about that now where, you know, those, you could almost look at it as those other movies were interpretations of the story, of the legend, and maybe this is what Jason really looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe this is the true Jason, and the others were just
Hollywood
stories
versions
being told. Hollywood versions of Jason, but maybe this is what Jason really looks like. I thought it was well done. I thought the portrayal of Jason was well done. I thought the look, the image of Jason was well done. It was the same but slightly different. It was his own variation, his own take on it. You know, interesting that he does. You know, we do see some of the crime scenes from the original Friday the 13th, which obviously alludes to some of the story being real. But obviously we stop short from saying, excuse me, you know, stuff from part 3 and 4 are real, because obviously Jason's mask didn't have the red markings, and it also didn't have, it didn't have the chevrons on it. It also didn't have the cut, the axe cut, right? Mm-hmm. So again, an interpretation, you know what I mean, of the original material. So it's based more on the original Friday the 13th, certainly, than any of the sequels. You might almost say it's kind of like what Danny McBride and those guys are doing for Halloween, where they're forgetting everything past part 1, and their sequel is going to be based on the original Halloween.
Could be like considering Jason, you know, what was he? You know, he didn't have the bag on his head. He was this character, and he had the hockey mask and all that stuff. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Tim.
Anyway,
I loved the interpretation of Jason. He was very much a force of nature, right down to the sound effects of him stomping. Yes. That was awesome. I love that choice. Like Dave said, I really liked the mask because I liked that it had no chevrons on it, because it was their own take. And I mean, I think everyone usually has the chevrons on it, or like somewhere on it it's just barely visible. But I like how this one had none. I really dug it. I really dug it. I very much like Kyle. It was a very believable Jason. Like, I mean, yes, Vincent said that he went for more of the undead look, which I like because, I mean, Jason's supposed to be undead anyway. He drowned, right? So
this is like a mythos character,
Yeah. I like it. I like that he used a bunch of different weapons. Again, it just keeps coming back to, for me, he was very much a force of nature, and I like that even though he's wearing a hockey mask, like there was points where like it almost looked like he was emoting, like when Kyle's hiding and he's looking out the hole of the door, and you just see Jason walk in, and then he turns and like tilts, and like he sees him, right? And like I don't know, it's just he just did a really good job.
It's great.
Like just really nice, real nice.
So adding a little bit to this, I like the little toss in that he did, because it was the detail in this movie that was fantastic too. Right down, like we said, about the crime scenes and all that stuff. But Vincent talked about the fact that there was an ode to classic hockey masks, like actual hockey masks, that was part of the thought process put into this. And when you see Kyle come into the main lodge by the fireplace, there's a bunch of hockey masks that are actually on that bookshelf. There's like a bright yellow one that took my eye first, and then there's a couple of other ones. And I'm looking at it going, nice, because I'm thinking to myself, he's got a point. If they would have tried to bring this camp back up, or if they, in the time had brought the camp going, there would have been, maybe field hockey or whatever have you, and it would have been older masks. So it makes a little bit of sense that there would have been multiple types of different masks. And instead of, a character like Shelley, just, a prankster who had a mask and that's where he gets it, it would have just been something that he picked up out of the camp where he's basically been living this whole time. Just, oh, there you go, hide my deformed face, and, everybody's happy. And I like that. I really did like the fact that it looked like it could have just been anything. And that placates into the weaponry. Because when he grabs the machete, what does he do? He goes into like that little shed area, opens up the door, slams his hand down on the machete that's right there, and just shing, and then walks out. Yeah. It wasn't that he just magically had a machete. There was a tool shed.
Yeah.
And he grabs the machete out of the tool shed.
Or the bucket where he grabs the axe from.
Yeah. Yes. There was weaponry. There was stuff around, and it was general tools that would have been there. A machete for brush, an axe for wood cutting. They were there.
Yeah.
And it was nice because, like you said, force of nature. He was from here, and, and that's what it was. So.
Yeah, no, it's just, there was so much detail in this, and like, you're looking around when he's going into the kitchen, and like, you're seeing all this old, like, cans of things, and
pots
like
old,
and it was just like, even the logos on shit were old and vintage, and like, it literally looked like it wasn't set dressing. He found the camp this way, like.
Yeah. And I like the fact that he was talking about the story that his brother had told him. And he goes into the kitchen, he's like, this must have been where Pamela worked out of. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh yeah, because that's right. Pamela was the chef, and it was her boy, and all this kind of shit. And I like, he had also mentioned about the not slapping you in the face with like the Jason bed from the remake. Yeah. But with him, it was the little like a prayer, the prayer card that had, to my son on it.
My special boy.
My special boy. My special boy. Right. And there was obviously a victim in the bed. Right. But that was a great scene because
was it a victim, or was that Pamela?
You know what? That's open for interpretation, I guess, until we might have to ask.
Because that's how I took it. But
then again, if it was the story of Pamela with her head chopped off, I thought I seen a body.
Yeah, it could be.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I was just kind of wondering. But he stands up and he goes up against the sheet, and that's when Jason grabs him And the fight starts.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, if that was Pamela, I mean, 30 some plus years, like there'd be nothing on that body.
No, there would be a little bit more decayed than that.
Yeah.
True. But, yeah.
It's all.
So some other hapless victim that happened into the camp at one point or another. Another story for the timeline.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anything else you want to add to this, Dave?
I'm good. I mean, I think we've made it quite clear that we like this movie. Well done. It took me by surprise. I was not expecting a near feature-length fan film, nor a fan film that was done, to this caliber. I thought it was very professional, very well done, well acted, believable. Props to Vincent. I can't wait to see what the guy does next. I'll be watching.
Let's just talk about one more thing real quick before we call it quits for the night, guys. The fact that he actually did not call this Friday the 13th, blah, blah, blah. He called this Never Hike Alone.
Yes.
And when you very first look at it, like I'm looking at the original poster for it, which he did, which wasn't Jason. Well, it's supposed to be Jason, but it's just the shape with Kyle standing in it. And I'm looking at it going, okay. And then literally you guys told me about it and you're like, did you see that Friday the 13th fan film? I'm like, what Friday the 13th fan film? It's called Never Hike Alone. I'm like, so it's not called Friday the 13th? But then you watch it and you go, you know what? Once again, it plays into the fact that it's set to that universe, but it's not part of where things went. You know what I mean? He had his own look and feel for it.
It's like an alternate timeline.
Exactly. And he's proven he didn't need the name to make it popular. All he had to do was make it and make it well, and people would come to see it, and they did. So I think it was perfect, the fact that he didn't name it anything to do with Friday the 13th at all.
Yeah.
All right? It isn't Friday the 13th, the fan film.
Yeah. One last thing we should probably mention is how about that surprise at the end? I mean, with Tom Matthews...
Had
told
me
Vincent,
grinning
it
from
blew
ear
my
to
mind.
ear. Yeah, grinning from ear to ear. It's me, you son of a bitch. Yay!
Remember me,
you son of a bitch.
Or asshole or something, yeah.
And I can't remember if it was Bloody Disgusting or Dread Central. It was one of those sites that the day it was released, I'm reading it on the site, and those sites didn't even spoil it for you.
No.
It was basically... Never Hike Alone, the Friday fan film you've been waiting for. Go out and watch this now. Oh, and
there's a great
it has a special guest star in it. And I'm reading in the article, I'm clicking through and I'm going, special guest star?
There's a guest star.
Who? Who is it? And they would not say. So I sat down and watched it, and literally I'm watching it, and I was so absorbed in the movie, I had actually forgotten about this special guest star. And by the time the ending comes and you see... the ambulance, and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, are you shitting me? Seriously?
Are you shitting me?
Are you
Exactly.
shitting me?
Shit!
Nice.
But,
All right.
like you said, Tim, blown away. And, of course, the play on the name Axel, like Axel from Part 4, I thought that was kind of cool, too, as something that, they threw in.
Yeah.
Well, before you cut me off,
I did? I'm sorry.
No, Adam.
Oh, because we got to
okay.
end the show.
He
in a
does
minute.
that. He does that.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing that I noticed about this film was the first 3/4 of it are very modern. They're set 2017. Mm-hmm. But once he gets out of the camp and like all the ambulance stuff starts, it almost feels like an 80s Friday the 13th. You got the character named Axel, you got the overacted two paramedics. Jason comes, he kills them both. Like, it was I like that they ended that way. What I want to say just in summary is that we've been missing a good traditional horror slasher film for a long time, and it is very nice that there's people out there that also feel this, and I love that Vincent took it upon himself to give what we've been missing. My only gripe with the movie is that I wish that it was a full feature length, but it is a strong 55 minutes, and it did not disappoint me at all. But can you imagine if we were able to see that in the theater, a theatrical release of this film, and it was an hour and a half? Like,
that'd be great. We'd be reporting on that right away.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I would like to take the opportunity to say that this man did something and gave it all to us for free as a gift. It was awesome.
Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you, Vincent.
Thanks, Vincent.
Yeah. And with that, and with that, we have to say goodnight, everybody. So don't forget to subscribe, like, follow us on Facebook, join the group on Facebook, check out Never Hike Alone, check out everything else that's coming down the pipe from Womp Stomp Films. You won't regret that at all. Say goodnight, Dave.
Good night, Dave.
Good night, Tim.
Stay spooky, everybody.
Take it easy, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in this week to They Cast from the Coast. We hope you enjoyed the topic and the discussion that we've had tonight. We're very excited about everything that's being produced right now in conjunction with the Misunderstood Art Company. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, say hi in the comments section, and just in general, check out the other content that's being offered, once again, under the Misunderstood Art Company. If you want to listen just to the audio portion of this show itself, we're making it available on iTunes, Google Play, and TuneIn on top of the YouTube channel itself. So thank you very much again for your continued support. Check out the rest of the Misunderstood Art Company's offerings. You might even see some familiar faces. And until next time, take it easy.